Hi guys, and welcome back here to the Dev Realm, and today we are carrying on our MMO series. And if you guys remember, what we did on our last episode is that we have set up our menu here. We have refactored a little bit how does that work. And the plan for today is that I wanna start to work on our inventory system, right? I wanna work on our, at least something that we can touch, find an item in the game, you can, get around it, press a key, interact with the item, and then grab the item and then display in our inventory. I'm not gonna worry about dropping things. I'm not gonna be worrying about splitting items and all that complicated things. I just wanna make sure that we have something to send to the server. And then after that, you guys can implement your own logic on top of it. We also gonna create a login screen, and that's gonna be fully functional as well. We're gonna create the function both on the servers and on the Unreal Engine side. All right, guys. So what we're gonna do here is that I am gonna close everything. Gonna go back to main. I'm gonna open up my other level. I'm gonna open up here my test level. And if I press play on, let me just press play here on normal, press play on standalone, I shouldn't have any issue. Select appearance player. Right, so what is the error that we're getting here? Let me double check. Access known, try to access set appearance array. Right, okay. So what we're gonna do here is that we only gonna carry on if it's valid. All right. If it's not valid, then we're not gonna carry on. This will allow us so we can play here on the server anyway. So I'm just gonna do that. Right, great. Now, to create an inventory system, what I would like to do here today is that I want to do a different approach. I'm not going to create like a World of Warcraft inventory or something like that, which is very time consuming, let's say. Features like that can take ages to implement, even months or even years, depending how complex your inventory. So what we would like to do here is something very simple, which is that we're going to work with a list. We're going to have a component that's going to have how much items I can have, what items I have, and that's it. And then we're going to display those items in a list back to the player when they open their own inventory, and they can basically maybe delete the item or drop. I haven't thought about that yet, but we're going to create something very basic, guys. Nothing too complicated here. Right, so to do that, the first thing I would like to do is that I would go back to my player controller, which I have. I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna create a new blueprint, and this time it's gonna be a blueprint actor component. I'm gonna call this BPC player inventory. All right, and I'm gonna open up the player inventory, and here we're gonna have a couple of settings. So there's two ways we could do this, and I think that's the way I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to create a structure which my inventory will have. So when the player loads, I fetch from the server the information from the server, and then I can give to my player, and then he can do all sorts of things. All right. So to do that, what we're going to do here is that we're going to create a new variable, a new folder called variables, or let's say inventory. Let's put all the inventory stuff together so we know what they are. Now inside the inventory, I am gonna create here a blueprint structure, and I'm gonna call this st inventory, right? And on my inventory, I'm gonna have a couple of things. So the first of all, I'm gonna have here, let's say max slots, which is basically how many slots can the player has. So max slots. And I'm gonna make sure this is integer, because we're working with integer values, and I think that's it. There's another option, but that's fine. We don't need to worry about that. Great. Now, another thing that the inventory needs is, of course, items, right? And we don't have a type for this yet. So let's create now a new variable on the blueprint, call, let's say, st item. Great. Now the st item will have, first of all, the name. It's gonna have the quantity, and maybe, you know what? Let's add a price, right? Price. We may need to add like how much money the player has, so we can probably do that as well, right? So in here, I can go back and I can create another variable called, let's say, you know, currency or money. Let's just call money, right? And let's work with integer values just to make everything easy and easy to store. Yeah. Now items, I'm gonna call st items right here. And by the way, guys, I do pretend to create a tutorial to create a more robust inventory. It's just that since we are working with character creations and servers, I just want to make this tutorial more dynamic. That's why I'm using a more simpler approach here. Which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a simple, you know, inventory. But anyway, now with that we have all the stuff laid out. So the name will be name, the quantity will be integer, and the price will be also integer. All right. I'm not gonna worry about item types, item icons. I literally just want to display data, get data, and save data. That's all my goal is to do that. All right. Now, the next thing that I wanna do here is that on the player inventory, I'm gonna create a new variable called the items, or let's say inventory data. I don't know. Make sure that's public. Make sure that is replicated to true. And now we're gonna search for st in inventory. Right, now we can copy and save this data. And now we have max slots, we have items, we have money, everything is good. Now, of course, we need to create the items, and to create the items, we're gonna do something very simple here. We're gonna basically go here, we're gonna right click, and we're gonna go to miscellaneous, we're gonna create a data table, we're gonna select the st items as structure, dt, let's say items, all right. You know, let's say that you're creating your RPG, whatever, and you need items like keys and things. So we're gonna add here, let's say, I don't know, let's say apple, which is the most, let's say, easy item we always have. And let's say that we're gonna create here, I don't know, a sword, something, right? I'll call this a sword. Right, leave everything as 0. The price is how much would you like to sell. So let's put like 100, and let's put this one, let's say 1. All right. Okay. Now that we have done this stuff, we need to basically find a nice way to add items to the player. And I am going to create like an item picker. And then when the player can, you know, interact with that, we can maybe try to add the item or something. So to do that stuff, what we need to do here is that first of all, on the player controller, we're gonna add this VPC player controller, player inventory, sorry. All right, which is good. Now, what I would like to do is that I'm gonna close all this stuff for now. I don't need it. I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna create here, let's say pickers, right? Pickers. I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna go to blueprint class, and I'm gonna create this time actor, and I'm gonna call this BP item picker. All right, nice. Right, so basically what this is gonna do is that it's gonna store information of the item we want to pick, and when the player is around and press a certain key or maybe touch this, I don't know how it's gonna happen yet, we can, you know, collect the item. I think I'm gonna do it so as you pass through, but anyway, this is easy and faster. Right, so now what we need to do is that we're gonna go and add a new variable, and this time we're gonna call this st, let's say item info, right? And I'm gonna basically make sure this is public, and this is going to be a data table row handle. All right, we're going to compile and save, and make sure that this has the DT items, right? And we're going to put the apple as default. Now I want to create here, what's the quantity? So item quantity. Okay. And I'm going to make sure this is an integer, make sure it's public. And I think it's best if you mark any of those here as replicated. And this one I'm just going to call item info, that's all. And the quantity that I would like to give is at least 1. All right. Now, on here, we're going to press add, and we're going to search for a cube, right? We're going to add a cube. I'm going to compile and save. We're going to, let's say, drag and drop this cube right here. Let's see what's going to happen. So we have our cube here, which is great. The only thing I would like to do is, let's say, C or physics, collision, advance. I'm just gonna put this as the default scene. There we go, simulate physics. That's the one I was looking for. I want to make sure that this cube, runs and does all sorts of things. Great. Now that we have all this stuff pretty much set up in here, I'm gonna add a trigger, all right? Or in this case, sphere collision. And this is gonna be the player, let's say, trigger. And we are gonna basically here set the sphere radius to, let's say, 200, all right? Now, I would like to see the sphere in the game, so I'm just gonna I'm gonna search for something called hidden in game. I'm gonna untick that. Nice, that's perfect. I'm gonna compile. I'm gonna wait 2 seconds, and now I have here. So now you're probably asking, okay, when the player touches this, so we need to basically, add this item to our, item inventory, right? So remember that we are working on with a server, and we need to make sure that this happens on a server, replicates, destroy the item, does all sorts. So let's work the first thing, which is the add logic on the inventory item component. All right. So the inventory item, I'm going to open up here our BPC inventory. I'm going to right click. I'm going to create a custom event. I'm going to call API add item server. This is going to be running on the server first. All right. And then I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to call this to run on the multicast, which means runs both on on server and on non-servers. Right. Now from here, I just need to basically, this inventory data, I need to break. I'm going to add a unique value to my items. I'm going to put it right there, and I'm going to call it right here. Nice. Great. And we're going to call this add item. That's all we're going to do to add items, right? I'm going to compile here. Great. Now we're adding this. Everything's good. This is running multicast. That's running on the server. Now the next thing I would like to check here is that on the player controller, if we added the player inventory, which we did, which is great. Now here's where things get, let's say, not tricky, but we need to be aware of it. We need from the player palm to be able to access our controller when we start the game, which means that what we could do here, if you guys remember, we cast our base player and then we do sorts of things with him, right? So what we can do here is that on our base player here, we can create a new variable. And that variable must be, let's say, the player controller ref. And here's gonna be BP MMO player controller. All right. Make sure that's you can see that data and is replicated to true. And I think that's the only thing we needed here really. All right, great. Now, when we start here on our controller, we have the player pawn reference, and we do call a couple of, informations that does certain of things. So what we can do here is that we can call this set player, let's say controller, player controller reference. And I'm going to put it right there. And the player controller is going to be self. And also on here, right, I'm going to copy and paste this one right here. I am going to plug it, this one right here. Compile and save. Actually, I don't need that. I can just, just remove the last node here. Now, when it comes to replication, I'm not sure if I need to do that. And you guys probably can leave maybe a comment. You can maybe test that out. But just to be safe, I'm going to make sure that it runs here and then it also runs on the server, just so I have if I need to get that data and to replicate, right? But anyway, guys, so now we have all that stuff more or less set up, which is great. Now our base player, on the begin play, what I would like to do here on the begin play, I just want to make sure that I had a delay of, let's say, 2 seconds. And I just want to do the print of the controller. And I would like to see what's going to happen here. There we go. I got an MMO controller on the character, which is everything that I'm looking for. Great. Cool. Nice. Now let's go to the easy part. So in Unreal Engine, when you work with with triggers, we do have these triggers that you can see here. We have this box, this events, and we have here begin overlapped. And if you click on the plus sign, right, we have a couple of informations, and we have all the other actors. We have overlap components. We can use, you can do really cool stuff with this. You can, for example, let's say your player touch a tree that is just a static object. You can replace the object to an actor, and then as the player leave, you can replace that with a static mesh. All right, but anyway, that's a story for another day. Now I'm just gonna print here the touched actor. So I'm just gonna do a print string, and the other actor, I'm just gonna do that. And the other actor should be my character name. So if I touch it, you see I have base player 0, right? So my base player, that's just one thing that started to be really annoying here. I'm just gonna untick this for now. I'm gonna make sure it's false, so I am not in the creator mode, so I can press play easily, right? But anyway, I have the player, which is good. Now I can maybe press play here as a client and play with 2 people in the same, session. So I can go here. So you see that client, blah, 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 blah. And now if I go back here, he also touch, and he has client server, right? So the server knows, and both the client and the server knows, because this is the client 01. So the server knows that I touched that, and also the client as well. So I know it's a little bit annoying, but it's things that we need to keep watching when working with servers. Otherwise, it gets very complex at the end. Anyway. So when we have our picker, what I would like to do here is that I would like to get controller, right? And no, I don't want to get the controller. Sorry. I want to cast to BP base player. All right. We could use interface here, but I'm going to do using the cast first. And then after we can refactor this to use interface. Now, what I would like to do here is that I would like to get the controller. Actually, sorry. If is valid, right? It will be valid. Sorry. So get the controller, and is valid, if the controller is valid, we could do a couple of things here. Now, on the player controller, and this is very important because I would like this to happen on the controller, I'm going to create here a new graph, and I'm going to call inventory. All right. I'm going to create here a custom event, and I'm going to call this API, let's say add item inventory. All right. And from the server, actually, from the client, reliable, I am going to call the same that's going to be running on the server, right? Server, right? And if you guys remember here, we need to make sure it runs on the server. Now, what we could do is we're going to get our player inventory, and we're going to call add, right? Item on the server. So we need to do that. And then from here, I would like to call this here, right? On the server, and that's it. Great. Now, one last thing I would like to do here as well is that I would like to pass this object reference so I can delete it after. All right. So I'm going to be the object, and this is going to be an actor, and make sure you pass in the object reference, the same here, actor. And I'm just going to destroy the actor after I touched the actor, right? Nice, great. Now I am going to, on the item picker, if I have a valid controller, I'm just going to call this inventory. And I just mistyped that. Now, what I can do is that I can find the item info, which I don't have yet. But I can also get here my object, right? Which is going to be, let's say, self, right? This is self. Self. Nice. Now, what I can do here is that I can make st item. For here, I can break this data. And I have the row table name. I do not have the name. But what I can do here, right, is that I can, let's say, get row table, right? From here, I have my row table, and I know that I would like to use my DT item, all right? Now, if it founds the item, I can, let's say, I can promote this to a variable, call temp item, okay, and I can probably, actually, no, this is a bad idea. Let's just do it like this, right? Do it like that, compile and save. Now you probably wonder, but I need to also set the quantity, and yes, you do need to set the quantity. So we're going to create here, let's say, quantity. The reason why I'm setting up the quantity like this is because I would like the quantity to come from the server and not from the client. Although we do pass the quantity of the object, and it is one of those things that's very tricky to add, but you know, we make it work. But anyway, you pass the quantity here. So compile and save. We're going to go back here, and we're going to pass the quantity that you applied right there. Now we can compile in here. The last thing we need to do before we can wrap up this is that when you add the item, you're just going to set member, right? The member that you want to set here is, of course, the quantity. And everything else should be fine. So let's see if this works. So let's say that I have this item, and I can go back and, all right, that didn't work. Let's check why. So all this stuff happened. So I do I have the item selected? Just put this one here. So if I go to the details, item info, I do have the apple, and I have, let's say, 2, right? That's fine. Now let's add the debug here. Let's see what is happening. So if I go back and edit, it's likely to not being replicated. Let me try playing on the standalone, and let's see if we can fix this issue, right? All right, it works on the local server, which is good. Now, if I list it as a client and press play, let's see if that's gonna work. So it's not really triggering anything. All right. Maybe is to do with a couple of settings that we may have to do here. The first of all is that on the picker, right? Picker. I'm gonna go here and search for something called replication. And always relevant and replicate movement, replicates. All right, nice. So now we're telling the Unreal Engine that this thing is basically replicated. Now I'm just gonna do a F9 here just to tell the Unreal Engine that I'm debugging. Now that worked. I'm not sure why it didn't stop here, but it looks like it's kind of working now. So let's see. So I did add an item. Now, if I press, let's say with 2 people, is the other person likely to see that? Let's see. So if I put it here, put this one there. There we go. So looks like we have the item replicated. Now, we need to double check if we are, getting the item on the player. So I'm gonna add a delay, and I'm just gonna do a print. All right, and I'm gonna get my player inventory. I'm gonna get items or get inventory data. I'm gonna break this stuff, and I'm gonna do the length here. And if the length is greater than, let's say, 1, I'm just gonna copy and duplicate this a couple of times because I would like to test it every time I add it. So if I go back and do that, it should be server 1 and then 2 right after that. And now server 1. All right, great. So we have 1, guys, because the problem is that when we are adding the item here, you guys remember we are adding unique values. Well, in reality, this is where inventory get very complicated, because we do need to add, let's say, multiple items to the same slot and all sorts of things. So I am gonna go a little bit loose on this one, and I'm just gonna add a value to my inventory. I don't care if it has the same slots or if it's repetitive, it doesn't matter. We're just gonna add, items to it. And now if I press, as I walk through these things, I should be able to go back here and, add multiple items to the. So, but the point here is that we have our inventory adding item working, and we can start it now maybe to create the UI for it. So once again, guys, I know this lesson got very long, but thank you very much for watching, and I see you in the next one.